correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPG, the podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience.
Welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm here with, my friend Hooli.
Hello. And I've
Yeah.
been on this podcast more than my own for the, for the last 12 months. But anyway.
But Steve couldn't make it this week, so figured I'd have a guest on. We'll talk about an interesting topic here in a minute. But before we get to that, I want to shout out the podcast for the week. And the podcast for the week is Primed by Cortex, which is the Cortex Prime unofficial podcast. Really fantastic show. Learned a lot about Cortex Prime. Just great work over there by JT and the guys. It's just fantastic. Yeah. So check out Prime by Cortex.
JT's awesome, can I just say. He is. As a person as well as a podcaster. He's great.
He really is. I need to get him in on a game that I'm running here soon. Because every time it seems like I go to run something with him, he's like, yeah, I'm in. And then just nothing. Something happens on my end, something happens on his end. So I got to get him either back on the podcast and apologize, or
I won't tell you what happened one time that I was listening into a live play that they were doing, which JT was running, and a few friends that I know from the States were playing. And I said, "Oh, do you mind if I just listen? I'll mute my microphone." Unfortunately, this is in the days before I actually knew what I was doing. And then I started giving my son instructions on how to do the dishwashing properly. And of course, I wasn't muted. And the next thing I hear is, "Oh, Ethan's in trouble." I've gone, "Could you hear that?" So it was very embarrassing, but funny nonetheless. Ask you about that story. Yes, anyway.
yeah.
The things I
Well,
do.
all I'll say is thank goodness for Steve and editing, because there's been a couple times where my significant other will walk in and she'll be like talking to me. I'll just be talking right back to her, and I'll just hear my microphone click off on the Discord. Like, oh.
As long as it's appropriate conduct.
Yeah, usually it's nothing too. She knows not to say anything too embarrassing around microphones.
Right. Okay. Well, that's
Product
all good.
of working with phones all day long.
Indeed. I feel your pain there. But anyway, moving along.
Well, speaking of feeling pain,
Yes.
or not actually,
Mhm.
our topic for today was actually going to be about running Star Wars RPG. So I've never run the Star Wars RPG in any way, shape, or form. Not West End Games, not any of it. And
Right.
you have a good bit of experience with that. So
I
I
don't know
sort
where
of
you get that from.
sort of hoping to pick your brain on some of the thought processes and how you come up, how you build stories in that, and how that works for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the main thing is to give a little bit of a background as to what sort of experience I've had in that realm. I started playing Star Wars back in the old D6 days with, back in 1988 is when I first, 88, 87, I think it was, when I managed to get the first book. And I've always been a massive Star Wars fan. And to have that in my hot little hands was like, it was a nerdgasm in the extreme. So I apologise to your listeners there for that word, but anyway, and yeah, it was an amazing experience, and we had lots and lots of fun. I think the first adventure that we ran, somebody wanted to play a droid, and somebody wanted to play a kid, and somebody wanted to play a smuggler, and we had a lot of fun getting those guys together in a pretty much sort of in between, because this is my second last year of high school, I should say, as well. So in between, like lunch recess and a few things, that we managed to get a few little, because we're all at the same school, and we just managed to get a few little sessions in between. And I think it started off in the streets of Tatooine, as you do, because every good Star Wars story starts in Tatooine, apparently.
Well, it seems like
it. And so, yeah, we sort of, there was a hidden cache of Imperial weapons somewhere on Tatooine, and it was crazy. But so, yeah, I've done D6 all the way through its existence. I ran a 7-year campaign under D6 Star Wars that was absolutely amazing, and went through, it had a spin-off series and whatever else as well. It was really cool. Then we went to D20, and my campaign imploded because we tried to convert it over, and it really didn't work, and I didn't get to play a lot of D20 Star Wars. I liked it to an extent, but we didn't get to play a lot of it. And then I gave up on Star Wars for a while, played a lot of Pathfinder. And then this other edition came out with these fancy coloured dice. And I said, I'm sorry, I've spent far too much money on Star Wars, because I'd managed to finally get the collection of Saga, because we had some difficulties for a while there getting stuff over from the States over to here in Australia, and so it made it a little bit difficult. But I managed to get it all together, and I never actually ran a game under Saga, but I played in one for a while. And then, yeah, this new edition came out, and I was very, very reluctant for the first 12 months. I just said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Why should I need to learn another session? God damn it. Why should I need to learn another system that I'm probably not going to use very much? People are going to object to it because of dice and whatever else. And then I went to PAX Australia in its first year, and I was wandering the stalls there during one of my breaks, and came across Edge of the Empire, and took a bit of a look at it and said, that'll do for the plane flight home. And I think I managed to get through about a third of the book on the way, and it's not very far from Melbourne to Brisbane, where I live. And I was just going, this is amazing. And then I remember a conversation that I actually had with Sam Witwer when he came out for Gen Con Australia in 2009. And he'd recommend that I listen to this little podcast that I think that, it's nobody really listens, which is my co-host on The Forge's main podcast, which is The Order 66. And when I started listening to them, having had this sort of suggestion from Sam, that they just clicked over to doing Edge of the Empire. So I started listening to them and pretty much learnt the system just by listening to that podcast and a few of their live plays and a few things like that. And then started to want to learn how to run this game because, Starship Combat seemed overly complicated, and a few other little things. So I started to develop my own tools for that and then put it up on the forums, and they're still used today, supposedly. And it was just a way for me to learn, because I learn by doing.
Right.
So, yeah, made it for my players who were pretty keen. I had a few people that came back from my old D6 Star Wars game to play, and yeah, it went gangbusters. We set it about 5 years after Episode 3 because the obviously the original trilogy was finished with, but so had the prequels had finished by that stage. So we had a clear idea. But I didn't actually run any games as such until such time as we had the beta version for Force and Destiny. So it would have been a couple of years that it had been going for before I decided to actually run it. And well, now I'm writing for for Genesis. I've I dream of working on Star Wars. But yeah, it's been a journey, and have my own podcast about the system because obviously Genesis is or Star Wars by FFG was the precursor to Genesis. And it uses exactly the same dice system. So I was able to use the skills that I gained there and bring that across to Genesis to run that. And then, yeah, I got tapped on the shoulder to write for FFG at that stage, and now for Edge. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, it has, yeah. And I we've had a lot of discussion, and I don't mean to, we can get into a little bit of mechanical stuff here and there, and because obviously Star Wars has a little different. Star Wars has what, one or two different mechanics than Genesis actual.
A lot more than that.
Oh, okay.
Star Wars
Well,
is actually like there's the best way to look at Genesis is that it is Star Wars Second Edition.
okay.
Because they refined a lot of the things that annoyed many players. It made it a little bit complicated in others, but the main difference was the talent trees. And we can talk about that as we go through, but that was one of the biggest changes that it's all about. There's still sort of a virtual tree, but there's a lot more that you can do now that all of the talents are listed separately. So you can then choose whatever you want as opposed to being in a structured tree. But structured tree for Star Wars, I think, is actually a brilliant idea. And we can talk about that as we go.
Yeah. So let's start with the well. Let's go ahead and jump into mechanics. So, obviously, I haven't really. I'm daunted by Star Wars. I should say that right up front. I'm a big Star Wars fan, but I'm not the most well-versed person when it comes to that stuff.
Yep.
And so I'm daunted to run a Star Wars game in a lot of cases because I don't want someone who's a bigger fan than me to run it, or to be like, "Oh, you're missing this." It's like, okay, and I understand that's something that we need to get over a lot of times, but so when it comes to mechanics, you were saying about skill trees in Star Wars. So obviously you have the skill system in Genesis, which exists as it is, where you can invest your points and buy into that. So you have a dedicated tree in Star Wars. Once you go down a path, you have to stick with this sort of skill set, or
Well, the way that it works is that, and we probably should be talking about something else first, but I'll answer
oh,
this question, and then
okay,
we'll move sort of kind of backwards a little bit. But when it comes to the talent tree, so you've obviously got skills, and then you've got talents, and the best way that I've heard it described is that talents are kind of like special tricks that you can do with your skills. They're kind of like feats from D&D. For those who are more familiar with that system, I listened to Eddie a few episodes ago talk about the tricks from Pugmire, and it works very similar in that regard. Obviously, it's not a level-based system, so you get experience as you go. And you can spend it on a range of things. You can spend it on your talent trees, or you can spend it on your skills. And that's realistically the only sort of experience points, or the way that experience points are spent. But before you go down that path, I just want to deal with your fear of running Star Wars, because this is not something which is isolated to Star Wars. I don't think it's something that's very relevant when it comes to running anything of a certain IP. That there is so much, like, I can't imagine running Middle Earth roleplay. Apart from all the tables, of course, I couldn't imagine running it because of the amount of lore and passion that has gone into that setting. Like, people know Lord of the Rings inside out, back to front. And I'm only sort of a casual. I've never read the book. I've never read The Hobbit. Yeah, I know, sacrilege. And I own both, but I've never read them. But I've certainly seen all of the extended editions. So the only sort of connection that I've got with the Lord of the Rings is through, but there are a lot of people that basically they've read the Silmarillion. They've those crazy people. And that's daunting to me. I can't imagine running it because of the amount of lore. And the same thing applies to Star Wars. I mean, if you've gone through and you've read everything you possibly can, and watched everything you possibly can, you're going to have a really good idea of where Star Wars is and what's what. But Star Wars is so big that there is always room for a story to tell. You only really need to know that the Empire exists, or the Republic exists, or the Separatists exist, or whatever organization is running things at the time, and then you can run it in every era. So it's just a matter of knowing those sort of small things. And then start adding things on from there. The big thing about Star Wars, and I think it goes down to any IP, depending on who you've got playing, is you don't have to rely on a visualization of the scene. Like, if it's your own setting, you've really got to set the scene. You've got to explain how magic works. You've got to explain how the politics work in your particular world. So there's a lot of unfamiliarity that your players are going to have to experience. With Star Wars, you don't have that at all, because you can just say, right, have you watched episode 4? Right, well, you know what a stormtrooper is. You know what a Wookiee is. You know what the Empire is. You know what a Star Destroyer is. You know what Darth Vader looks like. You've got a visual reference point that you don't have to explain. You can say, well, stormtroopers flood into the room. Everybody knows what a stormtrooper is. Probably can't hit the side of a barn, but what that looks like. So you've got that advantage. And the same sort of thing, as I said, applies to any IP. You can just see your players know what you mean. If you're playing in a Terminator setting or something, you can say a Terminator walks in the door, and it's like, right, I know that he sounds like Arnie. I know that he looks like Arnie. So you've immediately got their attention by not having to describe anything. So there's that assumption. But if anything's changed, like if they've, stormtroopers wander into the room and they've all got a red stripe down the middle of their uniform, well, you know that there's something special about them, because I've never seen that in a movie, and things like that. So you've got that advantage, and that's one big win for running Star Wars. It's then a matter of your choice of the system. I still maintain that one of the best systems, and I'm probably looking at it through rose-colored glasses, and I know that you guys at Eddie spoke about that the other day as well, is that you can, I've got very fond memories of D6 because of the campaign that we ran. As I said, it ran for 7 years. Going all the way from, I think timeline-wise, we went from the start of A New Hope all the way through to beyond Return of the Jedi. So there was, as far as that, I've completely lost track of what I was saying then.
You were talking about choosing system.
Yeah, so when you choose a system, I think the D6 was the best one because people were familiar with what a six-sided dice looks like. So if somebody has never had any experience in the gaming realm before, they've all played a board game with a D6.
Right,
they just call it a six-sided dice. And there's just a lot of them. Yes, it ended up being a fistful of dice, but the system was very, very simple. You just add up the dice and you add you add nothing or add a +1 or a +2. And, later editions obviously had the wild die thrown in just for a bit of fun. But that initial system didn't have the wild die in it. So it was just a matter of just rolling those six-sided dice and beating a difficulty number. That was a very, very easy buy-in for a player who's never ever played it before. And we had people come and go out of that campaign, like nobody's business because it was so accessible. And that's something that I think that, unfortunately, that the FFG version of Star Wars hasn't really grabbed as many people as it possibly should because of the accessibility with the dice. That's changed, obviously, with the use of the app and whatever else. And hopefully once Edge sort of gets itself up and running, then we'll see a few more reprints and people will have access to that. But it's an additional price point that they can't just go out and buy a book. They have to go out and buy a book as well as dice. Right. That's all that they have to buy, but that can be a barrier to people wanting to get into that system. I think as far as systems go, the FFG version is way better than D6, but it's just got the accessibility problem. I don't talk about D20 because ultimately it's D20.
Yeah.
I'm over D20. I don't think anybody doesn't know that by now that's listened to your show. I've done a lot of D20 and I just find that the amount of time that I have to put into prior to running a session, and I think that's changed a little bit with 5th edition, but it's still time that I have to put into understanding an NPC, where with Star Wars, I've just got my adversary cards and I just walk around with that and it takes me literally 2 seconds to work out what their shtick is and run it. It's as simple as that. So yeah, but yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That was a wild tangent.
No, it's fine. I was just thinking, I think that, all right, speaking of wild tangents, I'm going to go off on one myself. I think one of the biggest mistakes that, I wouldn't say mistake, but one of the oddest choices that I'd seen was, I remember when when Fantasy Flight Games, now Edge owns that IP, but Fantasy Flight Games at the time, Star Wars version, was coming out. And I remember everybody talking about it, and they were picking up the books, and then they would gripe because they'd come back into the game store and pick up the dice because they didn't realize they needed the dice with the books.
Right.
I never understood why they didn't just put a little blister pack on the, up the price of the book a couple bucks and put a little blister pack with the dice on it.
Well, they were a little bit smart about that. And to be honest, what they should have done, and I think in some cases they certainly pushed it, was the beginner box for Edge of the Empire.
That's
it had
true.
A set of dice in it. And it was a very, very basic version of the game, but its first adventure stepped you through using skills, explain what talents were, explain what combat was all about, explain what skills were all about. Like the first scene, without spoiling anything, is you're you're on the run from some bad guys, and you have to hide in a cantina, and it's got a lovely map of a cantina. And it sort of explains what the players see when they initially show up, and then it asks, right, what are you doing? And so, you've got a few options of hiding, or you can try to blend in with the crowd, or you can try to become a stage singer suddenly, as I've seen some people do. But it was a really good way of, introducing that to brand new people, and it was a really good price at the time. So you had a set of die, and I know people that have bought 2 boxes just for the dice, and so that they can, laminate all of the maps or whatever else, and just have them both sitting open on the table, or I think one half of it you've got to cut up because there's different parts to it. So they had one that you could have the full map, and then you've got the other part on the other side, which has all been cut up to the separate different maps.
I hate that. Just give me, just don't make me cut this. Like, I have so many books that have maps in them that I just,
Yeah. That's why I love PDFs, because you can just isolate
rip it
that
out.
PDF and just rip it out.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's just one of my biggest pet peeves. It's like, please don't put the map. Don't. Or if you're gonna give me a map, make it already detached. Make it like seal the thing in plastic wrap and just make it so when I open the book, oh look, there's the map. It's already out. I don't have to tear anything out.
Exactly.
Looking at you, Watsy. You're good for that stuff.
I know some of their books are just absolutely, fantastic to look at. But yeah, all of their big maps are like between. And I hate that, having to like fold down the book if you. Anyway, so I'm glad that we're seeing things like. And I know that Edge has done it with their latest release for D20, which is Midnight, which I've been doing a little bit of reading about that, because we've been having troubles trying to find the book over here. And it's glorious as far as the setting goes. Talk about gritty and nasty. Jeez. But yeah, the fact that you can, it's got a little code inside that you can download it from Drive-Thru RPG is fantastic.
That's wonderful.
And it's a shame that will probably never happen with Star Wars.
That's a licensing problem. That's a whole can of worms that
I'd love to hear. I mean, we'll never hear about it, but as far as how the actual license goes, because of NDAs and whatever else, but it'd be really nice to find out why that is. Because
I'll say it this way,
and whatever. So
we'll probably never hear about it this decade. But
no,
next decade, once the game has been like officially abandoned and the NDAs have started to decline, then we'll hear all about the perils.
Yes. So, but no, I think that, yeah. I don't know what I was going to say then, but that's okay.
But no, yeah, I agree with you that picking a system is super important to comfortability with a game and bringing in players. Yeah, I've always heard. Well, I've heard good things about all versions of the Star Wars RPG because it's the Star Wars RPG.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a version that I haven't heard somebody say, "Oh, well, this has good bits," because Saga, which is, you never really got to play, but I know a lot of people really love that, and a lot of people really don't care for it. And then, like you said, D20, the D20 fans are ravenous, and will get their fixes they need.
Yeah, well, I've heard of people who ran Saga, and they've taken one look at FFG's version, and they've said that they would never ever run a different sort of Star Wars again, because Saga has the feel that give the Jedi feel like Jedi, as opposed to feeling like they're always a little bit of a step behind in comparison to everybody else because in FFG they have to, purchase force trees and force talents and things like that to really benefit from that. But I think that FFG's balanced it nicely, and it was just the dice I think that were the biggest hurdle for some people. But I think once they bought the dice, I think they realised how good it was and how good it still is. I mean, there hasn't been a new product of Star Wars for at least 18, 24 months.
Yeah.
And but I really don't think, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here because that's one of the things that I would love to do with Edge, because I can't say any otherwise because I'm on an NDA. But that is one thing that I'd love to do, and I really don't see them doing any more. Or if they do, they're going to basically just do more reprints because the system is really good as it is. Yes, it'll be great to see what Baby Yoda's stats are. Sure. Yes, my partner has said that she'll play Star Wars to the end of time if she can play a Baby Yoda. So I'm sure that that's necessary at some point to do like a Mandalorian source book. But honestly,
I wonder how much. I wonder how much, though, that would be better served with maybe just a setting book, which is something they haven't really done before.
Yeah, look, I think I'd agree with you. I think that if one of the things that I love about the system is the careers and the specialization trees. And so with the specialization trees, you can then expand upon that, and then they've brought in universal trees so that you don't even need to go down that path of attaching it to a career. It's just a separate thing altogether. So there's certainly room for expansion, but I just don't know whether it's necessary because everything that we've seen on screen seems to conform to something within the game that already exists. But one of the things that I think would be interesting if they decided to ever do a second edition and bring it more in line with some of the rules from Genesis. I don't think they should get rid of the talent trees, and I'll explain that in a bit. But I think that if they had a core set of rules that covered, Star Wars generic, with maybe a chapter, 8 or 9 pages dedicated to a particular era, so that players and GMs would know enough to be able to run a game in that era. But then you go and have era books. So you would have like the original trilogy era book, you'd have the sequel trilogy, you could have Mandalorian, you could have, no, don't do a book of Boba Fett, that's silly.
Just roll it in with the Mandalorian. It's fine. No, it's seriously, it's fine.
Pretty much. Yeah, it was season 2.5. So let's face it.
No, we don't.
Ask Chris or Keith about that.
I understand. Yeah. Boba Fett, great, fantastic. Just put him in the Mandalorian book.
Yeah, as an appendix, preferably. No, seriously, it was a good show, sort of. Anyway, but yeah, sort of have those era books so that you can start. I mean, Lucasfilm has just released an entire new sort of storyline, I guess, which is what do they call it? The Guardians of Peace or something like that. That is sort of 100 years before. I think it's 200 to 100 years before A New Hope. So it's all of the stuff well before the prequels. With the Jedi at their highest.
Yeah, that's supposed to be where their new movie's going to be set.
Right.
is going to be in not to get in the High Republic stuff.
Yeah.
Which
That's what I was thinking of. High Republic. That's what it's
yeah,
called. Yeah.
I think that would be probably if we see another edition of this version of Star Wars,
Hmm.
like maybe not your 2.0, but still in this version, I think we would see that being added, because that stuff, I have a base knowledge of that, and it has some interesting things like the Vibram swords, which are not lightsabers and not as powerful as lightsabers. Or I'm sure
Right.
I got that term wrong, but there's this is why I'm always like,
Well,
look,
see,
I'm gonna get
having
things
said that,
wrong.
I love Star Wars and everything about it, but I still have not looked at High Republic stuff at all. I don't collect comics anymore because I have family commitments now. So I don't collect them. And I know Keith is probably, if he's listening, he's yelling at me going, buy the Marvel subscription and you can get it on your iPad. Well, I don't own an iPad, Keith. No. Hey, so so you've got comics and you've got novels and whatever else, and I mean I can't keep up. My funds only go so far, so I just focus on the eras that I enjoy, and I love that 10 or 20-year gap between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. And I know that a lot of the stories that we're seeing now are basically bridging that gap with Obi-Wan and Andor and whatever else. But I think that those series are going to be of benefit to role-playing in that era, because you're going to be able to see a lot more of how things are. Which I think is going to be very, very interesting, especially with all of the espionage and intrigue and things like that. So,
Yeah, I would love to. I need to sit down and actually work on it. So let's get into maybe working on stories. I would love to play between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
Like,
Well, that's
Rise of the
where I
Republic stuff, or Rise of the Resistance stuff would be really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I looked at when I first ran Star Wars, that was really all that we had was the stuff between A New Hope and because at that stage there wasn't any prequels. This was during the dark times when D6 came out, as we older people refer to it, when there was nothing. It was just before the likes of Timothy Zahn brought out Heir to the Empire and that trilogy. So it was kind of filling the gap, and they had a lot of great artwork and a lot of great people working on it, and the system was compared to what it is, what we see coming out of stores today, it was far too crunchy. But it was narrative to the extent that we hadn't seen in games like D&D. So I think that it doesn't matter what area you like to run games in, just make sure that you're communicating that. And you guys have spoken enough about session zero and run the game that you want to run. Put the feelers out there and just say, look, this is the era that I want to run Star Wars.
Okay.
Talk to me
Yeah.
and go from there. So that's what you need to do first before you run any Star Wars game, is you need to work out what area you're going to play, because that's going to put everybody in a certain mindset, basically. So that's your first stage. So step one, there you go. It's only taken us about an hour to do that. So step one, work out your era, and then go to your players and say, this is when I'm going to be running my game, and then go from there.
Okay.
And that's obviously that's also going to depend on your system too, because sometimes if everybody wants to play Jedi, I don't know whether Fantasy Flight Games is the best for running Jedi. From what I've been told, Saga is the best for running Jedi. So that may be something, and it's going to be determined wholly and solely on what you feel comfortable running as a GM and what your players feel comfortable doing, because that's what is going to, engage them, depending on what system it is that they want to see played. But if they're just doing I'm only doing D20, that's it, and I'm not doing anything else, well, they need to open their eyes and try other systems like this one. It's great. Try it. And I think that, if you can find a module, whether it be in any of the GM screens, or the adventures in the back of the core rules, or any of them that are available online. Some have pre-generated characters, others don't. But try them out first. This is what is really cool about one-shots. People can experience a whole heap of different games without having a lot of buy-in, that they can just enter into that Star Wars realm just for, an evening's gaming and see how the game plays. And I guarantee you, within 15 minutes, you'll understand the dice system. Yes, in the core rules, it explains it in 23 pages, but that's because it has to explain every, scenario that the dice can come up with. But once you've played, you will seriously fall in love with the system. So
yeah, I think narrative dice is best explained through play. It's a really,
I agree.
I
agree.
like before,
100%.
almost 2 years ago at this point, before we talked to Chris, me and Steve were like, I don't understand this dice thing. Like, what the symbols? It's like rock, paper, scissors, but I don't get it because it's too many things.
Well, see, I was the same. As I said right at the start of the episode, that it really, for me, I wasn't going to invest in another system. Why do I have to learn another system to enjoy Star Wars? I'm sticking with Saga. I've got my head around it now. That's the next system that I'm going to run. And remembering, I was running a lot of Pathfinder, so I was a lot more accepting of a D20 system, because that's all that I'd experienced for a long time. I'd played in other systems like, Shadowrun and Palladium stuff, as well as MERP and GURPS. But, I got sick and tired of learning trigonometry for some of those systems, because it did require a math degree. But when I've sort of read the system, I've gone, okay, this is interesting. What is this advantages? How does that work in the whole scope of things? And after listening to Water 66 and doing a lot more playing of the system myself, there was a few, that's the reason why that's his sort of moments that came about. So yeah, that's the reason why I loved it and still do.
No, I think it's a great system. I really do. I think if you haven't tried Star Wars or the narrative dice system in general, you really need to, give it a chance. And really trying that is going to change your opinion of how that system is, because, yeah, I get that it's not for everyone, but I really genuinely believe that a lot more people would enjoy it if they just tried it first.
Yeah, and I mean, if people are saying, I don't want to buy the dice because they're really hard to find and it costs so much money, well, there's a free dice app.
Yeah.
So use that.
I don't mean to be, but there's ways. There's a fantastic resource called Sessions, which highly recommend.
Yes. RPG Sessions is an absolutely fantastic free product that you can use. There's downloadable stuff for Roll20 as well. So
the people put in the work for Roll20. So if you're a Roll20 fanatic, you can absolutely go and do that. and
Yeah. Mm.
it's fine. Roll 20,
And look, the other thing as well is with Star Wars and just narrative dice system as well, just generally, is that the dice mechanic, believe it or not, has different levels within it. So I know that Chris has explained it. So if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, go back and listen to whatever episode it was where Chris turned up and talked about the narrative dice system. But let me just explain it in like 5 minutes. So you have 6 dice, 3 positive, 3 negative dice. And then those dice have, between them, they have 3 symbols. One on either side only appears on 1 dice of each. And the rest of the dice all have a mixture of the 2 positive symbols. Now, the symbols are success, and an advantage, and a triumph. And the triumph is the one that appears only on the 1 dice. And the success and the advantage basically are your positive symbols. And they'll only appear on your positive dice. And then your negative dice, you'll have your failed symbol, you will have your threat symbol, and your despair. And the despair is the one that only fits on the 1 dice. Okay? So you've then got the 4 symbols, which is your success, advantage, failure, and threat. The failure cancels out the success, and the threat cancels out the advantage. And realistically, that's it. And if you're running the game, I'd highly recommend doing what I did, which is I've got one of those little plastic standees that you can sit on your counter, which will have like sales or ring the bell for customers or whatever. And it's got all of the dice and it's got all of the symbols and it's got them nicely labeled and explains which one cancels which. And that's all you really need to know to start play. But there's another level again where each of the dice obviously represents something. Okay. So you've got your the green dice and the yellow dice, which is kind of like your skill. Your green is your natural ability. Your yellow is your actual skill. Okay, and then on the negative, you've got the purple, which is your difficulty. So instead of a hard set number that you're trying to get to, the purple dice becomes that, and it has symbols which obviously cancel out. And then you've got the challenge die, which is a red die. And that's sort of going to be for extreme scenarios. So if you're walking a tightrope, you're going to, it might be difficult. Okay, so it might be, let's say, hard. So that'd be 3 purple dice. But it's over lava. So there is a chance that somebody could go horribly wrong. So one of those purple dice would be upgraded to a red dice.
Note to self: don't cross bridges on Mustafar. Got it.
So then you've got the 2 magical dice, which I think is the heart and soul of the system, which is your setback and your boost die. Now, the setback die are for the negative side, and obviously the boost die are for the positive side. And instead of having those minor little +2s and +1s that you see in like something like D&D, but 5th edition obviously has advantage, which is close to what we're talking about here. But it's delineated with those dice. So if you have got a harness that is going to prevent you from falling into that lava, and you've got the correct tethering, well, you might get a couple of boost die for that. But this chasm has a whole heap of wind going through it because there's this natural vent that comes up from below, and this eerie sort of wind is blowing through. Well, that might be an extra setback die. So when those dice come up in certain symbols, you can interpret the entire roll knowing that, okay, so that boost die that has come up as blank, perhaps that something has gone wrong with the harness, especially if it comes up with a despair, for example, or if it comes up with multiple threats. Perhaps You get that scene that sort of zooms in on one of the pegs that has been hammered into the side. It starts to break loose because it wasn't secured properly and things like that. So you're actually starting to tell the story using the dice. And I know that Jay Little also speaks about this highly. And it's just another level again of how you can use the dice to tell the story in a better way. That's what I love about the system. It's things like that. But you don't have to play it like that. You can play it loosey-goosey. But that's once you start to get a little bit more experience, and you can really start to use those dice, especially if you're stuck for ideas as to what to do, because we've all been through the stage of, what do I do with 4 threat, a despair, and a triumph on a failed check? What do I do with that? So having those sorts of, I can look at the dice and see where they've come from. And how it's all interplayed. Like you might have a special ability that's upgraded one of your skill dice. So you know that perhaps if that's where the triumphs come from, I can look at that talent to gain inspiration for explaining away what's happening in this story type thing.
Right. Wow.
It's very cool.
It's a fantastic system. I really do love it. It's it's a really fantastic. It's probably, and I've described it this way, it's probably my favorite generic system. And running it in Star Wars, it makes sense. I mean, it was built for
absolutely. Absolutely.
But,
it's very cinematic. Like,
yeah.
I don't think that you would necessarily use it to run Good Society, for example, which is a fantastic RPG from some game designers here in Australia, a pair of lovely ladies who have designed that. And it's all based around Jane Eyre and that sort of era where it's all about lords and ladies.
Mhm.
And it's absolutely fantastic. But you would never use Genesis to do this, I don't think, because it's just not cinematic enough. Unless you're talking about like, Romeo and Juliet and zombies or something.
Right.
That would be that would be cool. Or if you're running something like, Merchant of Vengeance, or something like that in, Neo Tokyo with, I've actually played in a game like that, where it was basically just, Romeo and Juliet, but it was all done on like the bikes they would have chases on were called daggers. But anyway, that's a side note. But yeah, so
you're giving me terrible ideas.
and yes, we never ended up getting to play a sequel to it, but it was called Merchant of Vengeance, which I think would have been really, really cool because the guy who was running it is a huge Shakespeare fan.
Yeah.
But he also loved anime, so it went a little
Hamlet,
bit
but
crazy.
cyberpunk.
Yeah, pretty much.
That would be hilarious. That would.
Yes.
It's just all of the. Oh man, that's a whole rabbit hole. That
Yeah.
all of
And
the stuff that happens in Hamlet, and just it's not
built for
ghosts;
it.
they're holograms. Like it's.
You can mix and match with, much older literature with modern settings, and it should be done more often.
Yeah.
I tell you. There was one game that we played. Sorry, this is going to be another tangent for a moment. So there was a game that I played in a convention in Melbourne called Arcanacon, where we it was a Call of Cthulhu game. But we were, and let's see if you can pick it. So we were driving along as a group. We were assassins, I think, and we'd just finished a job, and our vehicle broke down, and so we had to walk along to get to the nearest destination or whatever it is. And then there was this, random hotel in the middle of nowhere where this young lady is we saw her from a distance, and she had this candle, and she was sort of beckoning us on. Can you pick it yet?
It's the Odyssey, isn't it?
No,
No,
not
it's
at all. No, it's a song in all things.
Oh, Hotel California. Yep.
Correct.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
I was
Took us a
listening
little
to
while
this.
to
I'm
get
like, it
that.
sounds like Homer's Odyssey, but
No. So we've basically gone in, and we weren't going to be escaping that hotel anytime soon. But the final story was we'd actually died in a car crash. But anyway, that's like that. So I agree. I think that, and look, to bring it back to topic, you can do that with Star Wars. And I know when I ran Star Wars, you can certainly see where I've been influenced by stuff that I was either watching or reading at the time, because there was. I do apologize for everybody who was just going to disown me for doing this, but I did time travel in Star Wars, which was interesting. But I had a big bad, which was called, his character was called, and I had no idea about this at the time, but the character was called Na Tamar. And then we were sitting around talking one day, and they said, "Oh, Na Tamar, that sounds like no tomorrow." And boy, did that just drop and I've gone, my God, no tomorrow, which means there has to be some sort of time travel. So there was, they basically, because they'd rescued him, and then from the Empire, and then because they were going to, unthaw him because he was inside this sort of cryo tube type thing. And then the PCs, they've rescued him, and then he's gone against them, and then started to hunt them down, sort of Inquisitor style. This is before we knew anything about Inquisitors. And then I think it was that he managed to basically find a way to, change the past and whatever else, and went through like a Stargate type thing. I make no apologies for some of the shit I've come up with.
I don't blame. Hey, look, honestly, there's some official canon that I wish they would just go, now there's time travel.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have to go back and retcon. We're just gonna actually go back and retcon.
That's right. I mean, look at Rebels. There was an episode in Rebels where they started influencing time.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, there was that, and the PCs ended up because his plan all along was because we had a PC who was a Jedi-ish type, and he wanted to basically throw her into this stasis chamber, and so that he could, take her back to his main base of operations. And the PCs ended up taking him out and throwing him in this sort of chamber where he would be frozen to be started all over again. So can you see where the no tomorrow comes in? Because he really just looped and everything was all fine. The PCs got home and nobody was affected. So I thought that was a good idea at the time, but
it's not. I don't
Star
know.
Wars Story Group probably wouldn't think that way, but anyway.
That's
But yes.
Yep.
But Star Wars, you can do anything as long as and this is probably step 3 with Star Wars. And I think this applies to any game, is you've got to set the expectations. And it's something that I know that you guys have spoken about in the past, and Chris and I talk about it all the time, is that when you run a game, you have to set everyone's expectations on what the PCs do, or what's expected of the players and what's expected of the GM. And that sort of goes into, what sort of scenario we're going to be playing, what sort of era we're playing, and whatever else. So by setting those expectations, you can then sort of really determine what sort of a game that you're going to run. and ask the players, do you want time travel? Because time travel can be real. No, don't do time travel. In Star Wars, rifts or something, sure. Star Wars, yeah, not so much. So everybody's cringing, I'm sure, by this stage. But understand that for me, it's like with a lot of my early games, it was a case of right, A New Hope happens the way that it happens, but the rest of it is open slather. So depending on what sort of actions the PCs take, I may completely ignore what happens in Empire Strikes Back. The events will probably be heading in that direction. And I know that a campaign I ran at one stage, the PCs they were getting a big promotion as part of the rebellion. And of course, Luke and Leia and Han and whatever else. And they were going up to Luke and Leia and going, the resemblance is uncanny. Because they didn't know they were twins. But they were trying to, use a bit of metadata, I guess, that they knew as players that they were twins, obviously. But that was a bit of fun. But so just set those expectations to say that that Star Wars will happen as it does. But as I said before, it's a big damn galaxy, and there is plenty of room for big bads to happen. I mean, you've got the corporate sector authority, which is never ever used, other than in the original Han Solo novels. You've got all the stuff which happened in the Lando Calrissian novels that a lot of people have forgotten, that you can be, using that, or create some other big bad that's out there. Sure, the Empire might come in at the end of the day and wipe everybody out because, well, it's the Empire. But ultimately, there can be small skirmishes that really suit the campaign and that everybody enjoys, because you want to make it a unique experience. But just having that background of familiarity that the players can experience.
All right. Well,
that's a lot of info dump.
Yeah, and I think we've been going at it for about an hour now.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So I think we put a pin in it and we move on to Game of the Week.
I
forgot about that part, didn't you?
Crap. Oh, dear. Actually, I do have one. One.
All right.
I may have mentioned it before, but
yeah, not a huge deal. So my Game of the Week, I actually stumbled across earlier this week. So my significant other is obsessed with Stranger Things, like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been having this itch. She made me watch the most recent season. Right. I have this itch to play some Stranger Things. And yeah, I have Tales from the Loop and Kids on Bikes and yeah, that's fine. But I found a game by 77 Studios that is pay what you want. Suggested price is $1.23. And it's called Movie Night.
Oh.
And it is a all ages storytelling role-playing game. Inspired by 80s movies.
Right.
Just seems like a really nice, obviously pay what you want, so you can pick that out at whatever price you feel comfortable with. They have options for soft cover black and white or PDF and soft cover. But it just seems like a really nice little pick it up and tell an 80s story, tell an 80s movie style story. Have some fun. Awesome. Have some, have some schlock. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So that's cool. That is definitely one that I picked it up earlier in the week and I was like, I was sort of thumbing through it and I was like, this is really good. Like, it's really neat, But yeah, that's a movie night. That's a game called Movie Night.
That's cool. I like it. There should be more of it. But all right, so my game of the week, it's going to be not really a game, but can I do a setting?
Sure.
Can I do a setting? Is that all right? Okay.
Yeah, it's my show. I don't
Or-
care. I make the rules to this game. I don't.
Right. Very good. Excellent. All right. So I'm just going to pull it up because it's absolutely awesome. All right. So we can do settings. Yeah, that's fine.
Yep, that's fine.
Cool. Awesome. So the setting that I'm going to recommend is it's available on DriveThruRPG, and thanks to the power of editing, you don't realize how long it took me to find it. But it's called Awakened Age, a superhero Genesis setting. Now, this is by my friend Mr. Zumwalt, also known as Drain Smith, on some of the Genesis forums and things like that. I was part of the playtest team for this. It's it's quite cheap. It's only it's less than $10.
Mhm.
So you can slap a bit of green, or in my case, a bit of bluish. I think that's the color of our $10 note. But anyway,
You guys
it's
have
$9.99.
the Monopoly money, don't you?
We have funny money, and it's awesome. We've got a $5 note, which is kind of a purplish mauve color.
Mhm.
We've got the $10 blue. We've got the orangey 20. We've got mustard baby poo yellow 50, and then a nice crisp green 100.
Well, I'll
And
say
it's
this
all
because
plastic, and you can see through it because it's got a little holographic window, and it's really, really hard to counterfeit.
duplicate. Yeah, I'll say this: I've interacted with like Canadian money, which is the same way. They have each note's different coloration, and it does make for like you pull a handful of bills out of your pocket, you can tell immediately what you have.
Yeah, because they're all different sizes too. That's the other cool thing. So they're all different sizes, and they're all different colors. And here's an interesting point. I think you guys have got the same sort of thing as well. They've all got a little imprint of what they are in Braille too.
Yes. Well,
It's very cool.
no, not by the print, not by the mint on our dollars.
okay.
But we
Right.
sell. You can easily buy. They make these little clips that'll do that.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think
But-
ours come. I could be lying.
Well,
I'm not
I
blind,
mean, if
so
they do,
don't-
so if they do,
Yeah,
that's
I'm-
fantastic. But
Yeah. Yeah, so it's all
So,
security
yeah.
encoded. They've all got right. Anyway, sorry.
yeah,
We've
Awakened
gone on a
Age.
tangent.
Yeah, no. I have a copy of this. I was I was gifted a copy of this by Mr.
Oh, very
Zumwalt.
good.
So
Yeah. It is probably, I would like to suggest, it's the best. It's certainly the closest way that I would have done superheroes had I have managed to finish some of the stuff that I was working on, because I'd been working on a superhero setting for ages, but with podcasting, all the podcasting I've done, no, seriously. As I said before, I've been on your show more than I've done my own podcast. But that's because Chris has changed jobs and moved house, and I've moved house, and COVID and all. Anyway, moving along. That's just me whinging, people. Me whinging. So, but yeah, Awakened Age is a fantastic setting. You obviously need the Genesis core rules to be able to play the game. But it's one of the biggest beefs with any sort of superhero setting is power levels. That people sort of suggest, oh, look, we've got Daredevil who is street level, and then we've got, Spider-Man who is more sort of your middle of the road. And then you've got your big cosmic people like, the Eternals or whatever else. How can you play that all in one setting? Well, this actually has, if you're familiar with Genesis, one of the great things about it is that it has 3 different versions of the same archetype. So you will have like your street level version, you will have your, world version, and then you will have your cosmic version, which is great for like your different level of power settings. And the powers work really well. It's not over the top. And it has some fantastic little mechanics. And the other thing which I find great about it is that you can add on to it without there being too much of a problem. So it's sort of going along the same sort of route that much of Genesis is, that it's a here are the rules, but you can use these bits and pieces to make your own setting. And this is just an add-on to that. And Scott's done an amazing job of making sure that it's not too developed, so that if you want to go and expand, you can. So there's always room for him to go and do a powers book and stuff like that. But this is probably the best version of supers that I've seen for Genesis ever. He did the right thing. Playtest is one thing that Chris and I on the Forge talk about a lot. And he has certainly put his money where his mouth is there. And there are a lot of people working on it, gave a lot of great feedback. Some great ideas came out of that. That ended up being, core central things within the book. So yeah, it's if you've already got Genesis and you love supers, I would highly recommend this. And Scott's the sort of guy that he is more than happy to get feedback, and maybe something you suggest might make it into another edition of this book, because he likes to update his games every so often, or may find its way into a future supplement as well. So it's really cool. Go and check it out.
Yeah, I will say I did read a bit of this, just life and time and not having all of the both.
There are so many games in so few hours.
Just
do you find
something has to start? You just start going. One of these things has to go, and usually it's sleep for me at this point. But
yeah, I hear.
Well, we've had, how many conversations have we had in your time? Steve,
like
why aren't you in bed?
In the afternoon, my time.
Yeah.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, and I'm still having deep conversations with you. I'm going, what friggin' time is it over there? And I think the same is true. For me, it's like it's 10 o'clock in the morning, dude. What are you doing? Go to bed.
Get some sleep, please.
Sleep's overrated. But anyway.
But yeah, I definitely I did read a bit of this, and it is fantastic, and it is really great. Like you said, well play tested, well flushed out, and just a fantastic thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show, and with that, where can you be found?
Nowhere. I'm an isolationist. You can never hear from me. No, seriously.
Oh,
you can find me at GM Hurley on Twitter. You can find me at GM Hurley on Facebook, where I live most of my life. Yes, I don't have one. No, seriously. You can find me also at the Forge by searching any social media and with at Forge Genesis. And you can also find us at forgegenesis.com.
All right. And like always, links to everything mentioned are going to be in the show notes. Discord, Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, all of those fun things. New TikTok has been made, so that'll be show specific, because I got sick of having my personal tied to the show.
What do you do on TikTok? I'm old. I'm 51. Actually, I'm 51. Well, thanks to the power of editing and whatever else. I was 51 a few weeks ago.
Oh,
I'm actually 51 today. So it's my birthday today. But anyhow.
Well, I got you quite a good birthday gift. You got to come on and yap to me for a couple hours.
Indeed. I get to podcast, which is one of my favorite pastimes. So thank you for your gift.
But
it's lovely.
TikTok is it's a weird place, because it's a mix between it's at its surface, everybody thinks that TikTok is this it's only for the kids, but it's really not.
It's not.
It
I'll
it
tell you
can
what
be
it
a
is.
very what was that?
I'll tell you what it is. It's a time sink. That's what it is.
Yes, it is exactly that. But it's the community on there is quite interesting because there's a lot of people with very good insights, and there's a lot of people with just a voice.
There's a lot of funny people out there. That's what there is.
Yeah.
Some of the TikToks I just cannot stop laughing about. But and they're
No.
only short, you know.
Yeah, but and then there's some genuinely like quality content on there, and we're hoping to add some of that quality content. So, but
Cool.
yeah, TikTok. I'll make sure to get that updated in the show notes so that you have the new TikTok. But as always, we want to remind everyone to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs. Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.
As always, we want to remind each.
Indeed. Please tell me that's going to end up at the end of the show. I love listening to that bit. And if you're doing that, if you're just pressing stop at the end of the episode when the music stops playing, you're crazy. Just go and listen to all the bits at the end. It's funny as fuck.
Yeah. always include. That was a early concession on Steve's part. He added like one or two bloopers, and then he stopped. And I was like, "Why'd you stop with the bloopers?" He's like, "Well, because I didn't know that was cool." I'm like, "Yeah, no, every episode."
Yep, absolutely. I look forward to that last part. Not that I don't look forward to the episode itself. It's always funny, especially when I start yelling at the car radio, because that's normally my commute. But you've been very, very generous and allowed me to have a little bit of a bitch about something you've said or whatever else. But it's always good. It's always good fun.
It's always no, it's always anytime you've messaged me, I'm always like, oh no.
It's like what you said in the other episode when we were talking about exactly this topic. It's like, oh, I've got an issue I need answered. Oh no, I'll message Hurley. And I will answer.
Yeah.
Because I live on. It's almost like I'm living in the same time zone as you.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, that's why I like having you on, because you always have something insightful to say.
Allegedly.
Well, most of the time.
Most of the time. Most of the time I just rabbit on. Don't know where I'm going with the conversation, but that's okay. That's part of the charm of this show.
Yeah, exactly. It's find a hole and jump down it. Where did this take us?
That's why I like it. It's great.
How did we end up in Wonderland? Well, there was
How
a
did
girl.
we end up as a tangent?
Yeah.
At the end of the show. How did we end up there? That's a great question. But anyway.
Right. And I'm going to stop the robots. Stop.